Hi everybody, this is episode 5 of the Compliance Coach. Welcome back to the YouTube channel. Today we talk about one of my favorite topics, the recruitment of compliance talents in compliance and winning the battle against the FinTechs. Why are we talking about that? Because the digital transformation in banking has really impacted over the last 5 years banks and suddenly started a competition that we didn't have on the radar. So in this episode you will learn 3 things. One is how the compliance function has changed over the last 20 years. 2, of how then digital transformation and AI have impacted the compliance recruitment and the battle for talent. And 3, what are the 7 strategies in terms of winning the battle against the FinTechs. My name is Ralf Ebert. I'm the Compliance Coach, 20 years of experience in banking, in senior global roles, in executive functions for compliance. I will give my personal insights, facts and visions on this topic. So stay tuned with this channel. Don't forget to subscribe. Thinking and impacting compliance differently. The battle for talents has been already in one of my last episodes when it came to the top 10 challenges in compliance in 24. So it was on number 5. Here you see the video. Number 5 and number 4 are really exactly. And now we will talk about the first chapter of this episode, which talks about how the compliance function has changed over the last 20 years. And in a nutshell, it's coming from a data collector and being a data validator. I think that is in a nutshell of how we can do it. Now, if we talk about compliance as such, has been created roughly in the year 2000 when it was mentioned for the first time. Most of the roots are coming from internal controls within banks. So that is how compliance has been developed. Very often it was either part of audit or it was related to legal. Now in most banks it has become a similar and dedicated function for that element. Now, what does it mean? As it was allocated to these functions was that normally people for compliance were either lawyers with legal background for the regulatory landscape, or auditors or consultants or accountants very often. Now that has, I think, marked the job part for compliance over the last 10 to 15 years. That has tremendously changed, and it has been subject to different waves, if I might say so. 2008 financial crisis. Banks throw everything that they had against this in terms of just dealing with problems. And I can tell you, at that time, it was one of the hype times of being a compliance officer. And whenever you even were capable of reading a KYC and know your client, then you were a dedicated compliance officer, which was certainly not the best way of doing so. But at that time, it was just getting people into the business. And that didn't change over a long period, roughly until 2018, where we had a lot of compliance officers fighting the fight notably against money laundering, but then as well other topics came up like data protection, cross-border, investor protection, etc. It was only about 2017-18 when then really the robotics and automation came up, meaning that banks were searching in terms of getting more efficiency within the compliance function and then less people, which as well was for the first time a setup of more skilled people. And so over the last roughly 7 to 10 years, we have seen a change in terms of the skill set that is requested for compliance. So we have less today people from law, but moreover coming from other functions. That's quite interesting, because when one of the surveys that I read is that especially compliance is a function where you can start working even without any kind of a risk background. So I think that's one of the most important parts. Now, in 2018, with the robotics, we saw as well the start of digital transformation projects taking place within the function. And that was even highlighted over the last 2 to 3 years with the appearance of AI and making the processes better, more efficient, and of course having an impact as well on compliance function, so to say. Better tools, more processes that might as well lead to a reduction of people, which we do not see. But this kind of transformation of compliance within transformation processes in banks had, of course, a huge impact that suddenly we are using and we are looking now for more people like data analysts, data scientists, modelizations, people that are good in statistics, calibration of tools, and by doing so, we might be sometimes exposed to competitors that we didn't have on the radar so far. That is in my next paragraph. So 2018 was the landscape in compliance for a turnaround on a lot of stuff. As I mentioned before, and digitalization came up. And for those ones who didn't watch my YouTube episode on this topic, just in a nutshell, why digitalization in particular came to the banking sector, it was number one, customer experience, meaning improving this part as one of the client-centric elements and strategies of the bank. Number two is, of course, cybersecurity and everything related to data protection to enhance that and protect people from that. Three, AI and automation in general was an efficiency driver and a cost driver. If you look on the facts of those banks who have come through the first part and first wave of a digitalization, it appears and looks like that the results are better and that they are more efficient. And last but not least, we saw at least as well blockchain appearing in the tool world of banks to making processes more, I will not say transparent, but more quick and as well with a certain track record. So I think these were the four elements that were part of the digitalization in the banking. And what does it mean for the functions? Now, if you look back in terms of how IT problems have been solved in the past, there was always an internal IT team present for the bank working like, we have a problem, so what can IT deliver? The truth is that today, especially with the appearance of AI, that has changed, meaning today we are looking more over in terms of what are the capabilities of our tools and the technology and what we can do out of that. And that, of course, was a clear factor that the internal IT departments weren't capable of delivering on such kind of a demand on technology, on data, etc. And therefore, suddenly we saw roughly in 2015-16 the appearances of the first FinTechs. And FinTechs are firms who are using technology to provide that mainly for the banking industry, meaning what you can't do inside the bank, you're doing that outside. And what does that mean is you need to go into collaboration models with these fintechs to create these elements. Now, the typical ABCD of fintechs is artificial intelligence, blockchain, and cloud computing, and last but not least, big data. That is what fintechs normally cover in that element. And as I mentioned, that led to the fact that a lot of banks either invested in fintechs, participated in common ventures, or as well entered in collaboration models to do so. And the collateral of that was that suddenly for compliance in particular, where, as mentioned as well, our focus point has changed from just collecting data, but moreover in going analyzing data and how to put that into right perspectives, that suddenly we were competing against the big fintechs and even I think against the giants of this world, the Amazons and Googles and tell me more. And that wasn't on our radar at all. So we had to change our focus in terms of how we get people, where could we get them. And the last question is, how can we be attractive? And don't forget, based on an US survey that just came out recently, an average salary of a fintech person working in a US company is 135K USD, which is a considerable amount of money. So the old, let me say, legend of banks are paying better isn't on the table anymore. And that is not by coincidence that, pursuant to a Cornerstone study, roughly today 90% of banks are struggling to get the right talent into place and to find Mr. or Mrs. Right within the process. So let's talk about the strategies to get people back to with the banking world in compliance. And A game changer has taken place in 2022 when the giants of Silicon Valley, the FANG as they're always called, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, Google's, they had economic problems and had to lay off people, especially data scientists and analysts. There we thought the bank is now coming back in the picture and has a chance to get them. But that didn't happen. And the question is, why was it? Now, I have my 7 strategies in terms of how we can improve that. But I think literally what it was showing is that suddenly there was an interest into the kind of old, outmoded banks to become an employer of choice. Yeah, because they gave stability, which these kind of FinTechs, at least in the last years, didn't offer. So there is a momentum, let me say, that we can win the game back, the infinite game, as Simon Sinek would say, and not just on a short notice, of recruiting the right talents for compliance. And I found out in total 7 strategies that are coming now. So reason number 1 is we are in compliance misunderstood and misperceived. I hope that this channel at least contributes to a better view on what is compliance and banking and what kind of activity is there and why there is a chance, especially for people from data scientist backgrounds, to join this bank. So I do everything in my hand of doing so, but I think the bank or the industry as such had been not quite transparent to the extent that it can be on this job and this dimension of what we are offering in compliance. And I think here we need to work on. So that's number 1. Number 2 is that, especially based on a survey that I read in the preparation of this one, that roughly 90% of people, young people in the data field, they are searching for personal growth, and for them it's very important to be accompanied straight from the beginning. So I think we as a bank, we have to offer internal programs, internships, skill set enhancement, etc., straight from the beginning. And I think that's one of the key points that we can offer, and as well to look for where do we get these people from. So at an early stage already, like summer students, interest people from universities or dedicated companies that have these kind of scholarships, etc. So I think we need to look on where we get the people at an early stage so that they get an early understanding of banks, and then how, once they're recruited, bring them on an internal journey within the bank. Number 3 is flexible working model. Yeah, we all have seen after COVID that especially banks were suddenly in a position not just on a voluntary basis but mandatory basis to offer work from home, especially in compliance. That wasn't the case until that happened. So for us, a huge change in terms of this element, which brought as well a lot of opportunities to us, because suddenly we had experts that could work for us that were not always on the ground or locally available, that had some other family related restrictions, and that were then in a position to join the bank. And in particular, I think the Generation Z, as they're called, they have already provided for this element. And even very recently in Davos World Future Job Request Report, it was clearly mentioned that 83% of the interviewed companies were of the opinion that the flexibility of time is important for life-work balance, and 71% insisted on the flexibility of location, which is important to them. So I think here as well, banks can play a very important role. So strategy number 4 is attractive salary packages. Now you would imagine that that is a given for banks. I have to say, in particular in the compliance function, that has been subject to, a little bit an up and down movement over the last years. As I mentioned before, and the average salary for a fintech analyst is quite high, 135 USDK per year. So the question is not only the salary, the question is, can we offer something else in addition? And I think that is together with what I said beforehand in terms of learning programs, seminars, skill sets, developments, etc. So the whole package of that a bank can offer, normally as well because of the size and the number of people, is quite consistent and can be as well a game changer. So number 5 is diversity. And diversity, I don't mean that gender-wise, I mean it in terms of the dimension of the work. As I mentioned before, and the compliance function has by default and by its scope to look into everything. Yeah? Meaning you need to understand business, how that is run, how a credit is applied, even how the middle offices and, let me say, transactions are proceeded from a technical perspective, because you are part of that one. And therefore, compliance officers have a very holistic view and a holistic understanding of how does a bank operate, and what does that give to you as a compliance officer is as well the chance to step from one direction into the other. And I have seen that in my long career, a lot of time happening in all senses, people from compliance going then to business, for instance, or business risk management, and vice versa. And I think this kind of diversity is as well seen by people joining the bank from the data analytic background, meaning compliance is certainly a very good testing environment or good platform to start. But basically as well, on a McKinsey study, it is normally the first step to go within the bank, and then gives rise and the possibility to do this journey on an internal level. And that is not detrimental to the company. In fact, it's exactly the opposite. Because the more people that you have that are familiar with different organizations and units within the organization can bring a lot of experience and a lot of efficiency to it. So that was the next strategy. Strategy number 6 is the Shetty strategy, as I call it. It's about the meaningfulness of work, or how to create impact in your work. Now, don't get me wrong. Would say that data scientists don't create any additional value. However, I think compliance in the banking industry can even offer this kind of ethical or value-driven approach expressed by a vision and mission statement in terms of why you are working here, and in particular to what you are contributing when it comes to avoiding risks, identifying them at an early stage, providing preventive measure, and so on. So I think compliance has really something to offer when it comes to meaningful work that creates impact for yourself, but as well for the organization. And my last strategy 7 is focusing on soft skills, especially the Generation Z, or the young people coming into the data analytics world. Based on a survey that has been published in 2022, roughly 70% were saying, yes, we assume that we have high skills when it comes to data scientists, but very low skills when it comes to soft skills and how to communicate, how to discuss elements, how to get to the next level within my job. And I think here as well, banks can play a very important role with mentorships, buddy systems at a very early stage to help especially these young talents, these experts in something, to develop as well on a personal level, and in particular to enhance the soft skill factor. So that in essence are my 7 strategies. So we are coming to the conclusion part out of these 7 strategies, and I honestly believe that the future in banking and in compliance is human. It is built by humans. It is certainly enriched by digital transformation, AI, and whatever will come up, but it will remain an activity for humans. And therefore, the talents that we are recruiting are even more important to that. As I mentioned, the talent skill set is hybrid. You need to have soft skills, regulatory knowledge, data scientists or data analytic capabilities. And I think that makes us in the bank so interesting now for talents joining us, because we have this wide approach that gives a wide opportunity not only to remain in one sector still, but going beyond and discovering beyond what is compliance in the banking, and to do the journey that you do in a digital transformation on a bank level as well on your personal level within the bank. So that is my hope, and I think with these 7 strategies to be applied, we have a good chance to win that. And if you're interested in terms of how to recruit beyond the CV a compliance officer, stay tuned on this channel, because in one of my next episodes we will talk about that. That was it for today. Thank you again for your valuable time. I really appreciate that a lot. Compliance Coach is for you here. Please don't forget to subscribe. My next episode comes very soonly, and looking forward to meet you there again. Thinking and impacting compliance differently.